Okay.
Are we ready? Okay, good. I think that we may have people on the public line. Do we need to do introductions? Dave, I'll vote with you on that. And then I thought we could consider the minutes and I could do a roll call for vote.
I don't think we necessarily have to do intros today. We do have some guests from the county, and I will introduce them when we get to that agenda item.
Okay, thank you. So let's consider the minutes. Have people had an opportunity to read them, and if you have any comments, please go ahead and share.
Alan here. I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Richard, I second.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Richard, I second.
Wonderful. So, yeah, Karen, your vote? Not with us? That's okay. George? Also maybe not present. Dave Burke?
I'm present.
You vote to approve the minutes?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Alan? You
Yes.
made the motion, so yes. Okay. And Carl Fisher, are you on the line?
You won't be joining tonight.
Okay. Holly?
Approve.
Lonnie?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And Richard? You
Move to
voted yes.
approve.
Okay. Lindsay Wise?
Approve.
Okay, anyone whose name I did not call?
This is Crane.
Great.
I vote in favor.
Thank you. Anyone else that gets to vote? Hi, George. We're just getting ready to approve. We're approving the minutes.
We see you.
We see you, George.
You can do a thumbs up if you want, George. Thumbs up or thumbs down, George?
I can't see anything and I can't hear anything because I'm on my wife's account through her company and it won't let me in. Does anybody know how to force Microsoft Teams to let me use my own computer?
You appear to be in the meeting.
We see you and hear you.
But I'm going through my wife's company and so I got a message that I'm not allowed to use this account.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to figure out how to log in separately because I'm in another company's computer right now.
All right.
You could call into the phone number too, George. I don't know if you can
okay.
On the agenda.
Okay, sounds like the minutes have been approved. So the next agenda item would be public comment and TTAC member items. I know we have some public comment, but before that, any of the TTAC members have items they want to bring up later in the meeting?
I would like to bring up a topic.
And that is?
Surge.
Surge, okay.
And I have a couple staff updates that I can provide on projects. This is
Great.
Dave.
Well, I'm sorry. We do have the Fern Street update as a agenda item. Are there other public comments? Okay, hearing nothing, we can move to the next agenda item, which is the Washington County Street Design Standards. Take it away, Dave.
Great, thank you. So We have some special guests with us tonight. We have Aaron Wardell, who's a principal planner with Washington County here. And Aaron, do you have any other folks with you, or is it just you tonight?
I have Reza Farhudi here as well, who's an associate planner.
Oh, Reza, welcome. So Aaron and Reza are going to give us an update on their Complete Streets design standards process. And I'm assuming you have a presentation and you're able to share your screen with us?
I do. I have a presentation and I will attempt to share it. We'll see how this goes.
Okay, if it doesn't work out for any reason, you could email it to me or Joe and we can get it on. Oh, there it goes. You got it. Is it working?
Great.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, I'm going to put it into presentation mode. Great, so everyone can see that?
Yes. Aaron, would you mind emailing that to Joe? I need it for the record.
Do you need me to do that right now, or can I do it while we're done?
No, just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So my name is Aaron Wardell. As Dave said, I'm the principal planner for transportation at Washington County. I gave this presentation to the Washington County Coordinating Committee several weeks ago, and your mayor had requested it for this committee. And so that's why we're here this evening to share it. This is a project that we've had in our minds to do for a number of years, and I know City of Tigard has done some really great work as well on Complete Streets, and so I think you're a bit ahead of us, but this is something that the county has had in our minds to do. We know that our transportation needs have evolved over time, and we had a desire for design standards that reflect the different types of communities that we've built in the county. And we also found that we had different documents providing guidance for what roads should look like, but that those things weren't actually adopted into the standards. And so that made things a little bit confusing when it came time to actually build a project or work with a developer. So we saw this as an opportunity to really consolidate and simplify some of the different guidance that we had specifically for bicycle treatments by adopting those directly into the standards. So the objectives for this work were to develop design standards that implement our transportation system policies and reflect these different types of communities, our different road users. The fact that our community's expectations for what roads are and should be has changed over time, to reflect multimodal throughput, and then to implement flexibility in our design speeds and lane widths, again, to respond to these different needs and different types of communities. For this particular effort, we focused on arterials and collectors in the urban and urbanizing areas. We have lower classification streets as well. And of course, we have a really large rural area with rural facilities, but our design standards work did not focus on those for right now. I wanted to start this with a few definitions. Some of these I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. The first is, what are complete streets? So complete streets are roadways designed to provide safe, accessible travel for everyone. All types of travel are equitably supported: vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, wheelchairs, and public transportation. When we started this project, we just called it the Road Design Standards Update. And that title didn't really get across what we were trying to do. So we rebranded it into the Complete Streets Design Update. The next definition is road design and construction standards. That is the document that establishes the technical engineering, design, and construction requirements for public road and bridge improvements under Washington County's jurisdiction. City of Tigard and all jurisdictions have a similar document. And then our transportation system plan is an element of the county's comprehensive plan. It's our 20-year vision of our transportation system, and it outlines projects, programs, and policies to meet our needs now and in the future. And Tigard, of course, has their own TSP as well. So this next slide is not particularly pretty, but I wanted to start by talking about what roads are we dealing with when we're talking about complete streets under county jurisdiction within the city of Tigard. So the green is Tigard's boundary. The red lines are roads that are under the Oregon Department of Transportation's jurisdiction, and the blue lines are county roads. So Washington County has jurisdiction over all roads in unincorporated Washington County, and we maintain jurisdiction over a number of roads, generally larger arterial type facilities that cross into Washington County cities. So for Tigard's interests, a couple of the facilities that these new standards would apply to would be Shoals Ferry, Beef Bend, Roy Rogers, Rorschach, Bull Mountain, and a handful of others. But just to give you an idea of which roads we're talking about, we don't have design authority over roads that are under Tigard's jurisdiction. We don't have authority over roads that are under ODOT's jurisdiction. So this next slide goes over some of our enabling language that we have in our transportation system plan. When we did our transportation system plan update most recently in 2014, we adopted some really good strategy language around complete streets. So I'm not going to read all of these, but generally they're talking about strategies for planning, engineering, designing, and constructing a transportation system that promotes safety and provides multimodal function. We are going to separate travel modes and minimize conflicts where possible. We are going to prioritize enhanced complete street and boulevard designs, particularly in town center areas. And we're going to consider all abilities and travel options when we're planning, designing, and implementing transportation improvements. So remember, I said we've been intending to do this for a while. When we updated the TSP in 2014 and added this language, we wanted to be able to implement it into the road design and construction standards. So it's been a few years since 2014, and now's the time to do that. This is a general timeline of the project. We really kicked it off in earnest about a year and a half ago. Throughout that time period, we've been doing targeted stakeholder engagement. For the first phase of the project, we did an audit of our existing documents. We looked at comparable jurisdictions documents and started to think about where we could possibly make improvements to our documents. We then developed policy framework and process frameworks that we reviewed. And then now we're moving into the phase of looking at draft updated road standards. So we're aiming for board adoption later this spring, possibly early summer. Right now, we have it tentatively scheduled for May. Our targeted stakeholder engagement throughout the process has included external partners, but has been primarily focused on our internal county partners because all teams within land use and transportation use the road design and construction standards. So we've had regular coordination meetings across the different divisions and working groups to make sure that we all understand what we're trying to accomplish with this update. And this next slide talks a little bit about the external outreach we've done. So we started out this work by identifying 12 key stakeholders representing different groups of road users and doing in-depth interviews with them. And we used those interviews to frame the scope of work. We did some initial outreach with the coordinating committee and some of our partner agencies. We've just completed our online open house. It's actually still active if you go to the link, but it was primarily active for the month of February. So we received about 100 comments, which is pretty good for a big topic like this. I find that generally the more localized transportation improvement, the better response you get. So for a big topic like this, that was a pretty good response. Plus we had a winter storm happen and that suppressed some of our response, we think. And then we've done a number of community group and committee presentations like this one tonight as well to gather more feedback. So jumping into what the actual proposed updates are, the first is to include area types for each roadway functional classification, and then have design details that vary by those area types. So the details specifically that would vary would be bicycle facility options, sidewalk widths, the design/target speeds, whether or not on-street parking is an option, and then the lane widths. So we picked 3 different area types. Initially, our consultants suggested 6 or 7 different area types, and we felt like that was splitting hairs a little bit. It was a little bit too detailed, a little bit too onerous to really fit parts of the county into that many different categories, so we settled on 3. The first is town center, main street, or station area. These are areas that are pedestrian friendly. They have lots of commercial and residential activity. People are using a lot of different modes in these areas. You'll see people crossing the street, riding bikes, also driving. Our proposed design updates for the town center, main street, station areas would include more protection for bicyclists and pedestrians. Reflecting the commercial nature of these areas, we would have on-street parking as an option. In our current standards, on-street parking is not an option on arterials or collectors. We would have lower design target speed and narrower vehicle lanes and medians, again, to reflect that lower design target speed and the fact that we have a lot of different modes using these areas. Our next area type is other urban. So this is within the urban growth boundary, but outside of the Main Street Town Center station area type communities. So this is showing the intersection of Murray and Butner. It's a pretty typical area type within Washington County. So these areas are more focused on vehicular traffic. We have a lot of freight traffic in these corridors as well. Our proposed design updates would include still more protection for bicyclists and pedestrians, an on-street parking option for collectors that are within residential neighborhoods only, a lower design target speed, again, from our current standard, and then again, narrower vehicle lanes and medians. And then our third area type for the county is rural. Most of the county is actually rural. And so while we have less roadways in the rural area, it is an area type that the county needs to think about a little bit. We are really restricted by state law in what we can do with transportation facilities in the rural area. So we're pretty limited in the types of improvements we can make, but that doesn't mean it's not something we're thinking about. We have a lot of conflicts in the rural area. We have cars, freight vehicles, farm equipment, and an increasing number of cyclists sharing the road. But we have no proposed updates at this time from our current standard, given a lot of those limitations. So it is something we're thinking about, but not included in this proposal. So this slide is showing our existing cross-section for an arterial roadway. So this is showing rural or interim on the left, and then an urban cross-section on the right side. There's no differentiation by area type. This is just the arterial standard in Washington County. We have a 45-mile-an-hour design speed, a 6-foot bike lane with no protective treatments other than a single stripe, 5-foot sidewalk, 12-foot vehicle lanes, 14-foot median, and on-street parking is not allowed. Now, I do want to point out there's a lot of county roads that don't look like this. They've had differences incorporated into their design, and that's done through the design exceptions process. Oftentimes that leads to a really good result, but we wanted to make sure to actually build in some of that flexibility to the standard so that we're not doing it on a one-on-one basis with a design exception when we know that for certain communities, we want different things than are in this standard. So this next slide is showing the proposed update. So this would be for an arterial roadway going through a town center, main street, or station area. And this is showing two different options. One is a 5-lane, in which case there would be no on-street parking, or a 3-lane with an on-street parking option. Again, that would be an option. We wouldn't have to have the on-street parking if it wasn't appropriate for some reason in that particular context. So updates from the current standard, we would be moving to a 30-mile-an-hour design target speed. The standard would become, or the base standard would become, a buffered 6.5-foot bike lane with an optional green paint treatment, an 8-foot sidewalk, along with a buffer zone for light poles, street furniture, mailboxes, things like that. The vehicular lanes would move to 11 feet with a 13-foot median, and we would have that option for on-street parking, as I discussed. So looking at the drawings, this next slide shows the arterial facility in the other urban areas. They don't look that different from each other because it's hard to see that the dimensions are different, but we would have a slightly higher design target speed of 35 miles an hour. We would have the same base buffered bike lane, 6-foot sidewalk, which is a little bit narrower, still with a buffer zone, 11-foot vehicle lanes, which are the same, a wider 14-foot median, which reflects the heavier freight use on a lot of these routes, and on-street parking would not be allowed because this is the other urban context. It's not in the commercial area. So that's a little bit about the arterial facilities. And I want to jump now into what we're thinking with protected bicycle facilities. So in the online open house, it went through actually 8 different options for how we could provide more protection for bicyclists. While we're considering what would be the base standard, we'd like to include in those cross sections our preferred alternative for higher levels of bike protection. We've found in most of our capital projects that our Board of Commissioners is requesting a higher level of protection, but we're kind of making it up on every project. And so we want to have in there a couple of different options that our capital projects managers can go to, or that we can ask developers to build, because we know that's what we're working towards. So this slide shows 4 different options. Not sure which of these would necessarily be preferred, but that's what we're looking for feedback on, is what do people who use the system prefer? And then we're balancing out maintenance and cost and some of the other pros and cons of these different types of design details. So just know that when we look at those cross sections and we see that on-street buffered bike lane, we are also going to be including this higher level of protection based on the results of this engagement that we're doing now. So with that, we have some questions. First, do you agree with the selected area types? Do you think our proposed design updates will achieve these project objectives? What do you think about bicycle protection design options and your experiences with that? And then this last one, I actually should have updated this bullet point because the online open house is not active, but we're still willing to go out and talk to different committees and groups and receive their feedback individually. So if you have ideas for other groups we should be going to, that would be fantastic. And with that, we're open for questions.
So
Looks like Alan has
go
a
ahead.
question. Yep.
So look at question number 3. I think one of the most important things for bicycle protection designs is visibility through all sorts of weather elements. I've seen some other designs just in my travels where it's been maybe visible during like bright middle day, but making sure that it's highly visible at night or rainy situations is especially for Serge because he loves the rain apparently.
Certainly, and I think that's a big concern in Oregon in particular.
Okay, Michael.
I just had, I guess, more of a comment regarding the bicycle protection. The one where it's near the sidewalk, I can see how that would be beneficial. I have a couple of kids who ride bikes with me, and that's beneficial because it's not near traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But as an avid cyclist too, I mean, I prefer the one near the road.
Mm-hmm.
So, but also too, like with the fourth option, I see an issue with those markers potentially getting ruined over time by cars hitting them. I don't know if you guys have experienced issues with bike lane designs like that with the markers.
Yeah, we haven't used the flexi posts in Washington County yet, but I have heard that from other jurisdictions that have used them. And I think that Tigard may actually have them in a couple of locations. Am I wrong about that? I thought I saw somewhere in Tigard that had the flexi post.
Yeah, you're right, Erin. It's actually, we've been using the delineators or the candlesticks quite a bit over the past few years. And when they're bolted and epoxied to the ground, independently of anything else, they do tend to get broken off over time. It's been our experience, but one of the new things we've been trying on in a few areas, and some of you might have seen this on Grant Street near Tigard Street, is where they're bolted into actual like rubber modular curb that's also bolted to the ground, and those seem to be holding up better over time.
Yeah, I think the maintenance question, well, two things. So the maintenance question about some of these different treatments is definitely something we have to consider. So you want to put in a treatment that you can maintain and keep in good condition. At one of the other meetings, we heard from people concerned about, I think it was Capitol Highway in Portland, where they use these, and that they end up in the bike lane, like broken and in the bike lane, and so they kind of become a problem. I don't know if that's just because of how they connected them at that point. But that's something we want to think about. And then to your other point about, as a parent out there with young kids, you like one particular type of design, but as a cyclist, you would maybe prefer a different type of design. I think that's so interesting because that's sort of the push and pull we've been hearing as we've been doing this outreach is, I want to maximize protection because I am thinking about vulnerable road users, or I'm a very confident bicyclist and I want to maximize my accessibility because I'm really using my bicycle as a vehicle and I need to be able to get places. And I see that in my own house because I'm the one who wants maximum protection, especially when I'm out with the kids, and my husband's the super brave cyclist who will ride on a county arterial with no stripe and be confident. So I don't know which is the right way to go. We'll have to figure out a balance for that. We did have a recent project approved by the Board of Commissioners. It's a collector facility where they chose a multi-use path, a wider multi-use path, and a striped bike lane. So, I mean, that's one way to do it. It just takes more right-of-way.
Thank you. Okay, Richard?
Yeah, I think I have two questions. The first is, did you guys run or know what the cost difference is between the 4 different bike lane scenarios? And also, with these new proposals, are you changing the right-of-way distance at all, or is that remaining the same?
So to your second question first, we made sure that what we were proposing fit into the county's current right-of-way standard. And we're able to do that by shrinking the lane and the median widths, essentially, and also because our right-of-way standards are taking into account additional space that may be needed for things like stormwater. So that is something to think about, particularly with a really wide 5-lane facility. If we're then adding additional protection treatments and we still need stormwater treatments and things like that, it is something that we'll have to think about on a project by project basis. But generally, yes, this does fit into our existing right-of-way standard. And then on the first one regarding cost, we haven't done a specific cost analysis for these that are shown. I can tell you that paint is the cheapest option and it takes up the least space, so it's the easiest one to do. The most expensive option, at least of the ones we're looking at here, I actually think the most expensive is the one on the lower left with that curved median, because it's a wider median that we'd have to go in and build separately, and then it's actually kind of challenging to maintain that kind of channelized bike facility. So I think that's probably the most expensive one to actually implement.
Thanks.
Any additional questions or comments that people have? Aaron.
Well, I will say, just while people are thinking if there's any more questions, we do have some next steps coming out of this. We'll be taking all of the feedback we've heard over the past month, compiling it, and making some suggestions for what our final proposed standards will be. Once we know what our preferred protection treatments will be for bicycles, we'll be looking at intersection treatments for those specific treatments and how we transition through intersections, because that's really important. And then we'll also be looking at a couple of other pieces that we haven't done yet, like mid-block crossings. So there's a few other components that we're going to be working with our consultants on over the next couple of months, and then taking it to the Board of Commissioners probably in May.
Okay, Karen.
Hi, folks. It's Corrine.
Corrine, I'm sorry.
No,
Hi,
no
Corrine.
worries. Just hi, Aaron and Reza. I'm wondering, you did a great job talking about how things are probably going to change for our bicycle users. I'm wondering if there are similar design considerations either completed or will be thought about for sites that have heavy transit use. I mean, certain intersections are just really tough to navigate around buses, and or any specific design considerations for pedestrian users.
Yeah, the transit question is really good, and that's something else that we need to explore over the next couple of weeks. We have a meeting set up. It's either 1 or 2 meetings with different TriMet staff who will be talking to about that. Transit treatments it's just a really complex and interesting thing. And if you've traveled around, you've seen some probably interesting things out there, and how they implement transit stops, and then how you wrap your bike lanes, particularly protected bike lanes, around transit stops. So there's a lot of different directions we can go when we start talking to TriMet about how we want to handle this. But that's something that we need to do some more exploration of. And then regarding pedestrians, so the updated standard includes a wider clear sidewalk space, as well as that buffer zone for street furniture. So I think that's a pretty big improvement on pedestrian treatments, giving them more space to move. Oh, and the other point I should make on pedestrians, we're also working with THPRD. We have an upcoming meeting with them to talk about when it's a shared trail, when it's a sidewalk and a trail, what's our preferred treatment for that? And if we have a roadway that is urban on one side and rural on the other, what is our preferred treatment? So I think we'll end up with a multi-use path standard for that particular situation. And that is relevant to City of Tigard, because you have edge communities now that are built like that.
Dave. Oh, I'm sorry. Karen, did you have more?
No, I just said thank you.
So really quick, I wanted to just mention and say thanks to Corrine because she sent out a notice about the online open house back in early February. So thanks for doing that. And I hope some of our members were able to participate. I won't put anyone on the spot though tonight. Aaron, I'm wondering if you could go back to the roadway ownership map for a moment. And one of the really, I think, neat things about this project is better differentiating between design standards that you might apply in more urban areas versus regional town centers or regional centers or town centers. And I think an interesting case study for us right now is thinking about Southwest Greenberg Road. It's a county-owned facility between 217 and Hall Boulevard. It's right in the middle of in the Washington Square Regional Center, and we're going through a plan update right now on that process. And it's a road that Tigard has been thinking a lot about over the past several months, because I think right now you could pretty easily say that it's deficient for all roadway users. I think it works pretty well for cars and trucks, but limited pedestrian facilities, no bike facilities, but a really important connection. And I think it's exciting to see that this process might open up some new opportunities to rethink the design treatments that you'd apply in a place like that. I guess, given that that particular road is likely somewhat right-of-way constrained, since you have a cemetery on one side and development on the other side of the road, I don't know, typically you don't see like policy guidance necessarily in a design document, but does the county have any policy guidance that would suggest how you make decisions around what types of treatments you would apply in a scenario like that, where it might, a range of alternatives might include potentially eliminating a travel lane to be able to accommodate the complete streets design goals. And then one other question too, on this particular road, there's about a half-a-mile stretch between improved pedestrian crossings. It's, I think, Locust to Hall. And will the design guidelines have any support for more frequent pedestrian crossings in a scenario like this?
Yeah, so I think that what we would do is want to take a look at actually our policy guidance on your first question about, when you have a constrained right-of-way, how do you prioritize what you do with that right-of-way? That's transportation system plan kind of policy language. And that is a longer-term outcome of this. We're coming up, well, it's 2021, but these projects take several years. So before we know it, we're going to be at 10 years from the last time we did a TSP update. And so there's a question about updating our transportation system plan to have more certainty about which roadways we want to prioritize for more protected treatments and which roadways we want to prioritize for just sometimes fitting in bicycle and pedestrian treatments, because these are old roads and they just don't have that on them. So there's kind of this next layer of policy work, and that's a question that we would address probably at that time. And then on your mid-block crossing question, we will be doing that as the next phase. We'll be looking at the design standards for mid-block crossings. I believe our mid-block crossing spacing standard is actually in our community development code. So that is something that we'll be taking a look at in the next phase of the project as well.
Great, thank you.
Richard, did you have another question?
Nope. I just need to lower my hand. Thanks.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for all this information.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Happy to be here.
Okay. So Dave, you were going to give us an update on the Main Street, Green Street.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, and I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so here we go. All right. Can you see my screen now? There we go. So we had Andy Newberry present to us, I think it was at our last meeting in February, on Main Street, Green Street. And one of the questions that I believe it was Lonnie asked was whether or not the design treatment at Scoffins and Main was taking into account truck traffic, freight traffic needs in terms of turning radius. And as it turns out, the designers did not use the appropriate turn template. And I'll have to retract what I said at the meeting, because I was quite confident that they would have applied the right turning templates. So Lonnie, thanks for flagging that. You can see on my screen here, this is how what a truck turning template looks like when it's applied to a plan view of a roadway. And you can see this is the WB-67 design vehicle, which is essentially the largest truck that you will find on our roadways. And apparently this is an area where we see some of these trucks accessing a lot that's behind the Rite Aid and the Value Village. And so Andy went back to the consultant team and had them run the templates. And as it turns out, the design that was initially being proposed, this median refuge space here, potentially landscaped or hardscaped median, won't work with these trucks making their turns from Main Street onto Scoffins. So the consultant went back and came up with a couple of different alternatives that would work, that still helped to accomplish one of our goals, which was to reduce the crossing distance on Scoffins at Main. And so I think, let's see, this is the one that's preferable from a staff perspective in the design team right now. So you can see that the median goes away, but we still get this new large landscaped, potential stormwater treatment area and much larger curb pedestrian zone designed in, but it still allows the truck to execute its turn. And the way that this the truck template is applied here is fairly conservative. Trucks and drivers will typically swing out wider, even past this blue dotted line, to execute a turn like this. So I wanted to share that back with the group so you knew what was going on there. And your Lonnie, was that you who made the comment?
Yes, I know that
Yeah.
the U.S. Postal Service has trucks that go
Yeah.
through there. And
Yeah.
that's the first thing that came to my mind was, I don't know if they'd make that corner.
Yeah, so so thanks for bringing that up, and this is the result of the conversation. Any other questions about that or comments? I see Michael, you have a hand up. Somebody else as well.
Yes, my question was, what's the inner red circle? Is that just if the truck clipped that edge, or what is that representing?
Yeah, so if that would be, I guess you would say the most conservative turning radius there. So if the truck were trying to stay completely within its lane, it would go over the ramped portion of the sidewalk there. But as I mentioned, typically they're going to swing out wider. But you know, there probably will be some design accommodation so that we're not tearing up curbs if a truck were to go over the edge there.
Yeah, I guess that was my concern.
Yeah. And then I saw one other hand. Oh, Lindsay had a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in one way, this is beneficial for pedestrians having the landscaping adjacent to a sidewalk. So, you know, it could potentially provide more aesthetics and like a nicer sidewalk for that long section rather than having a median that pedestrians can't really interact with except when they're crossing. So I just wanted to mention that looks good to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, there'll be more separation between the sidewalk and the road. Yeah. We also, yep.
Yeah, Councilor Goodhouse, I just wanted to thank Lonnie for catching that, being observant, and point out to the members that this is what we have these meetings for. So if you ever have anything that's kind of not seem right to you, please speak up, or later on email Dave to point things out, because this is what these committees are all about.
Yeah, good reminder for folks. I guess I should speak as well to one of the other concerns, and I don't have a graphic to share on this one right now, but that was at the intersection of, well, it's just off the screen here, down on the page, but I think Alan and Richard both raised some concerns around the exit driveway of the dry cleaners, and we spent quite a bit of time as staff discussing that, and we're not able to reconfigure the driveways, or more specifically, we're not able to remove that exit lane because it would be too great of an impact on that on the existing business there. However, we are talking about some design solutions that we could use to, really highlight the potential pedestrian vehicle conflict for drivers exiting the building, and then also to make sure that their drivers exiting that building are very channelized, so they can't make turning movements that we would not want them to be making. Likewise, not allowing vehicles to enter that driveway. It would be an exit only. So I wanted to share that with the group as well, and I'm happy to take any feedback that you might have on that. And if not, I think we can probably move to the next item.
All right, the Fern Street update.
Okay. So we shared at our last meeting, I know we have some folks calling in tonight who are interested in this topic. So staff has been receiving a number of email communications from residents on and around Fern Street in Tigard. I'm just going to go to my Google Maps here. And so we said we'd come back and give you a little bit of an update on what our plan is based off of the feedback we received, and on the the street classification, the type of volume that we're seeing on the street, the speeds, et cetera. And so staff is working on a more detailed response in a memo that we can share with the committee that will outline what we're planning to do here, that will also share that with obviously the citizens who've been contacting city staff, and we'll also share it with our elected officials, city council. So the concern has been raised around increasing traffic, concerns about cut-through traffic on Fern Street, and potential additional traffic based off of some new development that's happening. And given the nature of this street, it's an important connection for the city's transportation network. Right now this street is seeing, I believe it's somewhere between 700 and 800 vehicles per day, which is a very low number of vehicles for a street of this classification. And I'll just say that, perception is important, and the way that neighbors perceive traffic on the street is important, but it's also important to base our decision making off of data. And even though traffic might be slightly increasing, it's still very, very low for a street such as this. Similarly, the 85th percentile speed, which is the speed at which 85% of the drivers are driving at or below, is 24 miles an hour, which is what we would expect for a street that has traffic calming already on it. So the street has speed humps on it. There's not a lot that we can do to change or modify that. What we can do, though, is number one, we've added this street to the list of streets that will get the new and just passed by City Council resolution to, or I think it was an ordinance to do a new 20-mile-per-hour neighborhood speed zone. So right now, this would be considered a 25-mile-per-hour street. It will go to a 20-mile-per-hour street. That will have some impact on speed, likely to get that 24-mile-an-hour down by maybe 1 or 2 miles per hour. And then to address some of the concerns around shared space on this road, because there is no continuous sidewalk and no bike facilities, that will be adding shared lane markings very soon, which are the type of bicycle markings that you would see on Main Street in downtown Tigard. So aside from that, those are the immediate term solutions that the city can offer. Longer term, this street is not built to urban standards. It's probably not going to be one of the higher priority streets for rebuilding to urban standards in the near future, but down the road it could certainly see some urban upgrades. And what that means is you would get stormwater treatments, you would get sidewalks, likely a slightly wider roadway. And a project like that would obviously have some big impacts on the feel of the neighborhood as well. So I wanted to share that with the group and acknowledge that we have received some additional feedback, including a petition. And I just heard from Corrine that the link wasn't working, so I can share this out with the group. But there's a petition that Shelley had posted on change.org asking for a few things, including changing the street designation and doing a dead end. Neither of those things are viable solutions at this point. I'd also like to share that I did receive some feedback from a neighbor who was not in favor of making some of these changes, but would have preferred to see a side path constructed. And I think we talked about that a bit last time, where it would be challenging to build an improved side path on this road because of the topography and the tree coverage there. So just to wrap this up, you'll see a more formal response shortly from staff, indicating what we will do in the short term, and some details about longer term potential solutions. So with that, I thought I'd open it up for any questions or discussion. And I see George and then Michael.
Hey, Dave. I just had a question. Last time we discussed that, Tegan made a very, very strong point that we couldn't do anything because it wouldn't be ADA compliant, like grading the shoulder back a little bit, putting some gravel and bark dust. So my question is how did we get away with doing that on North Dakota Street, where we had the city came and graded the shoulder a little bit more and added about 18 inches of additional asphalt? So if that can be done on North Dakota Street, which is an arterial street, I don't understand why we would get into ADA compliance issues if we were just to grade the shoulder back 18, 20 inches, put some gravel and bark dust down there. I mean, the world is not covered in bubble wrap to protect everybody from sharp edges. If there is an ADA issue and they sue the city, well, then that's an issue. That's a risk we can take, because then that way we can get state and federal dollars involved and fix the problem. So I think letting all these over heavy-handed rules always stop us from using any sort of creative methods to fix or address a problem temporarily till it can be permanently fixed is not going to get us anywhere. We're just going to continually sit here and have these conversations year after year with neighborhoods of why we can't fix their street, why we won't fix their street. No, it's just really frustrating because I've seen it done. I know it can be done. It's just we have to have a little strength and stand up and say, yes, we're doing minimal things we can to fix it, instead of just sitting back and just being in total fear of all the woke culture out there that's looking to strike down anything.
Whoa, George. Hey, George, hang on a second, bud. I want to just address a couple of things. Number one, ADA, we have to follow ADA. We have no choice.
But we didn't do it on North Dakota.
I don't know that the context is the same, and I think context is important, and it's what I mentioned about this particular road. It's unique and different from North Dakota in terms of the topography and the trees. So what might seem like a simple just adding some dirt and asphalt is not a simple solution here. So
no,
number one,
we can't. We don't have to length. We can put a couple. At least if we had where we could, we'd make a little bump out, like a little pull-off area where a pedestrian had a little bit of a refuge. I think that's all really people are asking. Is like, hey, where can we go when cars are coming? Because the only place they can go is into the sticks or into the oncoming cars.
I'll just reinforce what I said about ADA, that we don't have a choice, and it's not, say what you will about it. We don't have a choice about that. I think there could be some opportunities where you might be able to fit in a little bit of a side path here and there on the road, and I think that's probably more of the medium to maybe long-term solutions here. We've offered up some solutions that we can do in the immediate future that will have an impact, and I think we're open to exploring medium and longer term solutions. But I think what you'll find with this location is it's a lot more complicated than North Dakota because of the topography. So. I thought I saw Michael
Yeah.
with a hand up.
Yeah, so I guess I have two questions. My first question is kind of more from a broad perspective, and I'm just thinking around my neighborhood. There's a lot of, it's an older neighborhood, and there's a lot of streets that don't have sidewalks. What goes into determining, like, what places get, will eventually get sidewalks? And then my second question is, in a neighborhood like this, I went and looked at like the age of the houses, and they were all built in the 70s and 80s timeframe. And what is taken into account, like as far as traffic goes, when new developments go around this? Is there anything that is considered with adjacent neighborhoods?
So I think so. Your first question was around like, what does it take to add sidewalks to a street like this?
Well, I guess more of what's the decision making as far as what streets get sidewalks, okay. Or yeah.
So yeah, it's a great question. I mean, Tigard has a lot of situations like this where we have a lot of sidewalk gaps across the city, and largely right now we rely on private development to incrementally add sidewalks. So, you know, as you pointed out, when these homes were developed, it was before we had our current design standards in place, our current roadway cross-section requirements in place. So these areas developed without having to build sidewalks. Today, it's a different story. So as parcels turn over, you do get some incremental sidewalk development, and I'm just stating that as a fact. I'm not saying that that is the ultimate solution, because as we know, you know, development, particularly in an area like this, occurs very slowly, and you know, if you don't do a more significant project, you won't get a continuous sidewalk. So right now, this is a neighborhood class street, so it's the second from the lowest classification that we have. And today, if this street were designed to standard, it would have sidewalks, a wider roadway cross section, and it may or may not have bike lanes. So neighborhood class streets, in some cases, would have bike lanes, in some cases not. And you know, likely in a situation like this, because of the topography and the context, there could be some challenges with trying to fit a lot more roadway space to accommodate all those different items. You know, I think you just saw some cross sections from the county, and when you add things, you are going further and further out, impacting the right of way. So. And then a question around prioritization. So we do improve roadways wholesale over time. So a good example of that would be 121st Avenue, which we're in design right now. And that's that's a higher class street. So that's a collector. And typically, you know, we'll be targeting those collectors, those more important system connections for larger projects like that. So the reality is, because the traffic volume is so low on this street, that it you know, and it probably would not be as high of a priority. But that said, you know, it's still an important connection. You have obviously people walking and biking on it. So that could get some extra prioritization points that way. Alan.
Yeah, I just want to mention that issues like these on roads are really what brought me into wanting to join committees like this to get more involved. But particularly because it takes understanding what those nuances are, what the limitations are, and where you can actually push up against it. So I applaud people getting together in this neighborhood to share information and communicate with their neighbors about what they actually need and bringing it to the city. But I think reminding people of what some of the expectations for how quickly something can change is not something that can be done overnight. You mentioned it quite a few times here too, Dave. And the more we want to get very risky with it, the more other areas are also want to get risky and experimental with their areas and with their changes. And as a committee, us coming together to have a larger plan for how we get after these more problematic roads is a key direction for our committee to keep in that consideration. Yes, we want to jump after everything. This is the one that's coming at us right now, but there are other areas in the city too, to Dave's point, that may have faster speeds. They may have less issues that we can actually get after. So the prioritization is going to have a larger impact for the entire city. So as we go through this, it's very tempting to want to just jump in and fix this one particular smaller issue. But our committee is the city as a whole, and reminding everybody involved that there's limited budgets and limited time for the city, and the more people that want to get involved, this is a great time to see who's actually keeping up with this within this little neighborhood, and encouraging them to join committees like this one, or joining the other committees to figure out how the city can get more money, more funding to help projects like this down the road. And that's all.
Great explanation. Thank you, Alan.
I don't know if I saw any other hands up. Let's see. Oh, Richard and then Kareen.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to comment on some of what you were saying also, Dave, and that, I kind of joined this committee because there's a road similar to this in my neighborhood. And what struck me and surprised me was how large the backlog is on some of the larger streets to get those up to standard. And it's unfortunate that it's taking as long as it is, but back to what Alan was saying, I mean, it all comes down to money. If we don't have the financing or the funding to do a lot of smaller, well, not even smaller sidewalk infills, we're still trying to line up the money for some of these larger sidewalk issues and street improvements. So I think there might be, at least on my part, I know I was kind of ignorant to what the real priorities are for Tigard as a community or as a whole. And sitting in on the committee and being part of it has really opened my eyes up to what some of the larger transportation issues are. Not to say that anybody's neighborhood street that has these issues isn't a problem and needs to be addressed. It's just there are larger roads that impact a lot more people that I guess will be prioritized. I think that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I think these are all really helpful comments, and I'm not trying to be dismissive at all of the concerns, and that's why I was saying perception is important, and dealing with traffic or changes on your street. It's but if you do look at the problems that we have across the city, and Tegan's been developing this prioritized list, we have a lot more locations that have from a data perspective, much more significant problems, and that's why this particular street might take longer. I will throw out that there is an option for neighborhood residents to come together and form a local improvement district and fund their own street repairs. One of my former city jobs, we did just that and assessed all of the neighbors, somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a piece to rebuild the street, and that is certainly an option. I think
Corinne,
Corrine
did you
had
have
her
a
hand.
question?
Yeah.
So I think it's really great that we're hearing from these folks about this particular street as well. But I think I would agree with some of my fellow committee members who are taking note of the fact that the committee as well as city staff do have to respond to and approach issues on a citywide basis. And we kind of do have to flip from the hyper local to the citywide perspective and back and forth as we think through the work that we do as a committee. So I really appreciate those comments. And actually, I had put my hand down because I was going to ask about and mention that the county has the ability to do local improvement districts. So I think that's a great solution. Dave, thank you for mentioning it. I also really appreciated what you had to say about the fact that there's a lot of context, that every street and every project is a bit different, and there is no one perfect solution that works in every situation.
Thanks, Corrine. Holly, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So kind of a different take on this road, and it's maybe not specific to this road, but is there a threshold for accidents which would cause you to reconsider changes on these types of roads? Like, you know, the volume is low and we know that people are traveling at acceptable speeds, but if there were a certain number of accidents or a certain type of accident, would the city reconsider that?
Oh, absolutely. So traffic safety, transportation safety is something we take very seriously. And I know Tegan's on the meeting, but and if you want to chime in, Tegan, feel free. But in our research on this road, I think in the entire crash history that we have for this particular road, there's one incident that was a non-police call crash. So what that means is that there was no personal injury and property damage. It was under $1,500. So we just don't have a crash history here on the street.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're offering up some solutions that should have an impact, and we will detail out some potential options that are more longer term. But as it stands right now, we would not cut off access to the street, would not do a dead end here, and more significant improvements will have to wait.
Well, thank you everyone for all of your comments and thoughts. We appreciate it. And Dave, thank you for the clarification. So you want to move on? We have been talking about our work plan for this coming year. And I don't know, Dave, if you want to lead that discussion?
Yeah, so, well, let me just fill in the next couple months here of agenda items that as we talked about, and then maybe you and Richard can talk more about some of our longer term plans over the year. So next month in April, we will have Susan Shanks, who's a senior land use planner at the city of Tigard, presenting on the Washington Square Regional Center plan update. So that's the project I brought up while Aaron was presenting on the Complete Streets design standards when I was talking about Greenberg Road. So this is a really cool project that Susan is doing, and it has significant transportation, I don't want to say impacts, but there's some real, different thinking about the transportation needs in this area. So I think it'll be a great opportunity for TTAC to provide some feedback and ask questions. And we'll include a link to the project site so you can review that before the meeting, so you're a little bit more prepared. And I might even ask Susan if she has anything she wants to share in advance, so you might be able to think a little bit more about the project before she shows up. So that will be April. And then in May, we have Sean Farrelly coming to talk about the urban renewal substantial amendment or substantial update. Corinne, you can probably help me with this one. Project. So thinking about it, I believe it's expanding our urban renewal district, or maybe extending the time frame. I'm going to learn more about it in May myself. And then I'd also like to do a TSP update for you in May. We'll be kicking off the second part of our public engagement process in early May, and it's a good time to share some new information with you guys on the project. Councillor Goodhouse, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna, since it's kind of timely, you mentioned on the urban renewal district on what the council is putting forward to the voters. I thought I'd just recap that real quick because it's going to be on the May ballot.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And so what it's looking to do is expand the maximum indebtedness and time frame on it. So if I think it's vague numbers, but I think the maximum indebtedness was 22 million. I can't remember when that expired, but the new one's going to go into something in the 40 million range. And it's going to extend the time frame on that as well. And what we're looking at is funding for projects like the Universal Plaza, looking at building a proposed parking structure. If we do the proposed city center combined facility, that would be over there by Burnham and Hall, probably like a 300+ unit parking structure. So it's going to be able to fund and expand and do more projects in the downtown area, but it needs the vote and the passage of from the voters to do that, just to extend it. If it doesn't, then the old one still stays intact, but it's just what we want to be able to do with it and expand in that urban renewal area in the downtown Tigard area. We don't have enough time or money in that left to be able to do what's needed down that area.
Thank you for that summary. That's really helpful. Little preview for the committee. Okay, and then I believe that we had talked about trying to do this Tigard on the Move panel discussion, and I'll let Ruth and Richard talk a little bit more about that. I think we were talking about doing that in June. And then one of the other topics that we want to get to before the end of the year is have our finance group come in and give a presentation on transportation funding, and we'll align that with the TSP work that'll be focusing on transportation budget at that time. So those are some of the big topic areas over the next few months that I wanted to share with you.
And if I may say, that might actually be a good time for the people on the Fern Street neighborhood to come in and learn more about funding for projects like their street.
That's a great point. Yep. Thank you, Alan. Lonnie.
Thank you. I wasn't at the last meeting, and so this could have been covered, and forgive me if it was. There was a project where we were putting barrels and signs in a part of the neighborhood by the Genesis Trail for local access only, and all of that stuff is gone, and some of it was being, moved by neighbors and stuff. Is that project over?
So the pilot is over.
Okay.
We took down the pilot project, and yeah, part of that was just being the middle of winter, and we were having a lot of signs disappear. So yes. We do. Thanks for bringing that up, Lonnie. That is a project that there's definitely some interest in seeing another one of those or some expansion of it. I would need likely some input and assistance from the committee on that project. We are going to look at doing that again this year sometime.
I just want to add to that
Mhm.
during that pilot, for a guy who lives across the street from that area, there was a lot of foot traffic and a lot of what I recall Brady Bunch moments, where there were families walking together and with their dogs and their kids on bikes. And, you know, maybe that was the pandemic, or maybe that they were feeling safe about it. But I think it was achieving what we were trying to achieve. And let me know how I can help with that.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
This is Ruth.
Yeah.
I wonder if we maybe have time for that to be an agenda item for April, just for a discussion with the committee.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that would round out that meeting nicely. Yeah.
Some next steps, and if people have ideas on particular neighborhoods they might like to have considered, and any input along that from members would be appreciated.
Okay.
So Richard, do you want to, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Ruth.
Just Richard, do you want to talk about what we were thinking with Tigard on the Move during the panel?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot, but please chime in. So from my notes from our meeting, and that's what I'm going off of, I should have talked to you about this before the meeting, Ruth. We were talking about maybe doing some stuff about equity in transportation, and possibly having Kelly Rogers maybe see if he'd be willing to speak. And to be honest, that's all I had in my notes. So
well, we were talking,
that's a good start,
Tigard
Richard.
on the Move was the effort last year, or, you know, in the past, where we would have a speaker. You know, we'd have our business meeting and then host a panel or a speaker on a particular topic. And so we were thinking that we could do that around the issues of transportation equity, and work to identify speakers for a panel. And so the June meeting, we would do a business meeting from, say, 6:30 to 7, and then do a presentation on transportation equity that could be opened up to other committees, as well as, you know, just other people within Tigard area that are interested in that topic. Dave?
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is a team effort. And I think we're getting there. So we've done this in the past. Pre-COVID, we were hosting these Tigard on the Move presentations, and I think we did 2 or we did 3 of them. And so we'd like to bring that back. It was quite popular. We were doing those at Symposium, and of course now we'll likely be doing that online, but everybody's accustomed to that now. So we would look at assembling a small panel of probably local experts. So I think we'd be looking for a smaller, maybe a subcommittee of TTAC who would be interested in helping organize that. So essentially what that means is we've got to find the panelists, you know, put out some advertising. We can do that through Tigard's social media channels. Just arrange the date, set up our Tigard on the Move website again. This is stuff that I can all help out with. But I think that's in a nutshell. I do see a couple hands up, so I want to address them. I think
just I want to recognize, just a minute, Dave. I just wanted to recognize Karin and Carl met with us, and they did provide us with some leads and some ideas on speakers. So, go ahead.
I see Lonnie and then Lindsay's hands up.
I don't think mine was up. It shouldn't be.
Oh, okay, Lindsay.
No,
sure. So this reminded me that PSU has transportation seminars every Friday, the Transportation Research and Education Center. They're also all online. But this Friday's is on equity. It's forging equity in cities, using equitable transit-oriented development as a blueprint for policy and practice. And they're free, and it's just an hour from 11:30 to 12:30 this Friday. So I'm going to put the link to that in the chat in case anybody wants to attend that.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay.
Mm-hmm.
Alan?
Yeah, I just got reminded of this here. Dave, on the Fruing Street project, I didn't realize there was going to be a replacement of culverts underneath that as well until I walked through there and saw the whole road is torn out. How is that going, and has there been any issues along the way with that project?
Quick before I talk more about that project, are there any last comments or questions about the work plan?
I'm sorry, I got mixed up. I thought we were on the next one.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, no problem. Corrine?
Yeah, this is Corrine. I was just wondering, so basically it sounds like we have kind of a schedule through June. Is that something that you'll be sharing with the group? Or is that just something to kind of keep in mind for us? And then my other question was, you know, after June, do we have a sense of some other things that might be happening, be taking up our time, or will we be kind of having a similar meeting, like, you know, to discuss what comes next later in the year?
So in question number one, yeah, we can share out the we have a little table that Ruth put together that I can use to update it and send that out to the group so we can see upcoming agenda items. And I don't know if it's helpful, we can actually maybe just build that into the agenda itself, have future meeting topics kind of listed out there. So if that's helpful, I'm happy to do that. And then on the second question, I do have some agenda ideas. I don't know the timing yet of some of these. So for example, the city of Tigard right now is working on our own design standards update, similar to what Washington County is doing. And I'd like to share an update on that with the committee. The TSP I'm anticipating is going to take a couple more meetings this fall as we get closer to adoption. So, and then also I want to leave it open in case any members have any suggestions that we can take for topic requests. So that's sort of where I'm at right now, Corrine.
I think, Dave, if we can update that work plan document, and then just, you know, we can list what we have through June, and then the other topics to be determined as to when they would be, we would want to go ahead and schedule them.
Okay.
So that would give people something to kind of look at and review. As we've talked about our work plan, we have a lot more ideas than time. So, and some of it, of course, has to do with when people would be available to come and present, and the timing around particular things like the engineering standards and other things. So I think the committee would be pleased to be able to just see the variety of things that are being considered.
Okay.
Does that answer everybody's kind of questions at this point about the work plan?
Yes.
Okay, oh, great. So we're a little bit ahead, so we have plenty of time for any of our TTEC member items. Dave, do you want to do staff updates first, or
why don't we start with, let's start with Serge's item, and then I'll give my staff updates.
Great.
Hi, this is Serge. I my topic I wanted to bring up was the North Dakota crossing of the Fannel Creek Regional Trail, North Dakota Street crossing. Several years ago, maybe now, I don't remember for sure, when I was on the former subcommittee of this committee, the pedestrian bicycle subcommittee, we discussed at length solutions for this crossing, and it's a little bit fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure Mike McCarthy had said, "Okay, we're on it. We'll get on it." And I don't know. I went for a long time without going there, and I realized just recently that it's just as bad as it always was. That nothing has happened, and I'm wondering if city staff can weigh in on this. Is there, if this is it just been lost, or is there? How does this come back to to the front burner? When I walked by the other day, I measured the width of this for those of you unfamiliar with it, it's a two-way bike lane, 7 feet wide. If you're heading northbound on the trail, you are facing traffic with just little raised reflectors, many of which are gone, separating you from the traffic. And then if you happen to cross at the same time as someone going southbound on the trail, there's just not a safe amount of room. And I noticed, and this trash can's been there for a long time. There's a trash can place, City of Tigard trash can, that narrows the width down to 4.5 feet, right, where people are trying to go two ways. So if any city staff can weigh in on this, or if anyone else knows what's going on or what's not going on, I'd appreciate it.
I can give you an update on as you know, the North Dakota Street Bridge is going to be replaced. It's an ODOT managed project, and ODOT funded, ODOT managed. And Serge, I tried my hardest to get them to extend the project limits to capture the crossing so it could be included in the project, and I was unsuccessful in doing that. So that would have been an opportunity to really get in there and fix it. So that said, it's still fresh in our minds, and yes, it's a very problematic crossing. It will be identified as a project need in the TSP, and we're looking for opportunities to fix it. There's some challenges with the right of way and the sensitive areas around there, but it is something that's fresh in our minds, and we're trying to figure out a solution.
Is there any way to get a temporary, like replacement of reflectors or some candlesticks in the meantime, or?
Actually, I assume Tegan's still on here. Tegan, let's talk about that. We're doing a similar sort of treatment probably later this year over by O'Mara and McDonald, and I think we might be able to do something like that here. So we'll look. What's there today, as you mentioned, Serge, it's sort of like a wider shoulder that was installed. I don't know if I would actually call it a bike lane or not, but that was the temporary sort of interim solution that's stuck around for many years. So we'll see if there's something that we can do that's fairly low cost that we can do quicker in this location. And we'll get back to you on that, okay?
Yeah, thank you. One other thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I appreciate that in general you don't mention we don't have any crash data for it, but I was told at one point on city staff, what are we going to do about 121st Avenue? And the answer was, well, we just don't have any crash data that shows that it's dangerous. And I know you know how absurd that is, because for one thing, we never get near misses never get recorded, and for another thing, on the low volume street, Fern Street, and really North Dakota for that matter, there just aren't ever going to be enough crashes to get the data. So I appreciate that you only mentioned that when someone directly asked about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Serge, while we're talking about Fano Creek here, I might as well, in this location, I might as well say that we are trying to capture the Tigard Street crossing in the project limits for the Fano Creek, or the Tigard Street Bridge. And since we have a bit more control over this one, we'll be able to likely include that. So likely you'll see an improved crossing at Tigard Street. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment regarding this North Dakota crossing. Every time I cross through there, it seems like traffic, even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour street, never seems to stop. And so I don't know if it's just they're not aware of the crossing there. It's not, I mean, I guess it's marked, but I guess that's something to consider too.
Yeah, when we've been doing these improved crossings, we've typically been adding in the RRFB flashing beacons, and this is the type of location where we would do something like that, and hopefully some more significant improvements like that. So like curb bulb outs, or even potentially doing a center refuge island in a location like this would be the ideal solution. Driver behavior at crosswalks, with, if we're not doing much enforcement or targeted enforcement, and we don't have great signage, then sometimes you don't get the best driver behavior. And that's something that TTAC has done before, is doing driver awareness campaigns. I think we're always open to doing something like that in the city as well with TTAC's help. Lindsay and then George.
I drive that part of North Dakota a lot, and I'll say that it can be tricky when there's a pedestrian or a bike using that shoulder part. Like, you don't always know if they're going to cross or not, because they could just as well be continuing westward on the street. And so that's part of why there might be some confusion from drivers and not stopping when we should be stopping. And the visibility can be a little tricky. So I just wanted to mention that. Just the fact that you have people using the shoulder to get to the crossing can make it harder to tell what people are planning to do.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. That's a good observation. George?
Yeah, same issue here in North Dakota. Several years ago, when I was doing the traffic, the foot traffic count, I saw somebody using that dirt path and then tripped on the uneven ground. And I had brought that up in our TTAC meeting and asking if we could use some of our small project funds from the gas tax to maybe level that dirt trail out and even put some bark dust down to make it a little bit more forgiving. So, but still nothing's been done about that. And then I also asked if we could have the city come and clear the vegetation away on the north side of the street there to make a better line of sight. And that still hasn't been done, and same on the south side. So it makes me curious, what if we were to bend the asphalt trail to along the line that the people have made the desire path, and then that way then we can connect it with a walking path to the actual crosswalk. Because what I see most of the time is people either do that thing where they take a jog up to the other part and cross the other part, or they just cross right across North Dakota, which causes some conflict between cars because they don't understand what people are going to do there. So there's definitely some options, I think low-cost options to fix that, that we could use our discretional gas tax money for.
Yeah, those are good suggestions. We do have the ped bike fund. I think the gas tax is probably limited to right of way, so we might not be able to use it out of the right of way. But the ped bike fund, I think, has some flexibility of where the funds are coming from. So definitely something that we can look at. And then in terms of the maintenance of the brush and stuff, I'll see if we can follow up on that and get that improved, because yeah, you're right, on that northeast corner, you don't have very good visibility. So I'll see if we can get something done. You know, that's the kind of thing too. It's always good just to submit those to the Public Works request email so that they can get into the queue. That's the best way to track that stuff.
Dave, you said the Public Works, is that off the City of Tigard website somewhere?
Yeah, we'll send a link out to that after tonight's meeting.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep. Okay, should we move on to Fruing?
Yes, please.
Only if nobody else says anything. That's what I get for stepping out of the room for half a second.
So Fruing Street, I think some of the people on the committee are probably aware that the city applied for a community development block grant through Washington County to fund a sidewalk infill project on that section of Fruing, essentially a little ways in from 99 to, I think it's Ash Street. And so we had applied for about $500,000 to do the sidewalk, knowing that there was some complicated stormwater work that was going to need to happen. But we didn't know how complicated the stormwater and the culvert were going to be. And so what was initially estimated at a $500,000 project jumped up to, I think it's nearly $800,000 now because of the complicated stormwater and culvert work that had to be done. But we were able to find, I think Public Works submitted a supplementary budget item to get that covered, and the project is now underway. I don't know, Alan, did you have any specific questions about the project, or?
I thought it was just going to be sidewalk, and I was surprised to see the whole thing got tore up, and just wondered if there are any other complications as it came about.
That's the main one, and you know, it's a good environmental sustainability story. Is we're able to do some significant improvements to that stream right there that were much needed. So all in all, a positive project, but a lot more expensive than we initially thought it was going to be, and that's typical of transportation projects. Michael.
I just had a quick question in regards to that. So sidewalks are being added, correct? In that area?
Sidewalk. So a sidewalk on the north side of Fruing Street. That's right.
Okay, and I actually live nearby, and every time I drive down Fruing, I see residents parking on the sidewalks from those apartments across the street.
Yep.
Is stuff going to be done to like eliminate that?
So I had this conversation with our project manager a couple weeks ago, and they're designing the sidewalks so that you won't be able to park on them anymore. Yep, we flagged that for the project. Great. Yep. Lonnie.
You know, I just heard something that sparked my interest. When you said you won't be able to park on the sidewalks anymore. I see that often on the sidewalk here on Walnut Street. Can you tell me a little bit about the regulations that are involved with that? Like, is it okay for people to park on the sidewalk?
No.
Okay.
I have some photos. It's not okay.
I have some photos with some information that I want to share with somebody to get these people to stop doing.
That's I think that would be a parking and potentially code enforcement issue. I don't know, Tegan, if you're there, help me. Where do those inquiries go?
If there's a parking violation, we have PD, like non-emergency PD, that can respond to that. And that goes somewhere separate than just general code violations. But If you see someone parking on the sidewalk, then yeah, you would contact PD about that.
So it's a
So we can send.
It's a business that does that and does it every week. And I have a photo of the vehicle and the license plates and the company name on the side of the vehicle. I just want to turn it over to somebody and have them take care of that and let these people know they can't keep doing that. It's going to destroy the sidewalk.
You could send that to Dave and I, and we can forward it to the appropriate parties to investigate.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Perfect. Happy customer, here to help.
Just another comment along those lines. There's a traffic concern thing on the Tigard website where you can submit traffic concerns, and it says parking specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just
I was going to mention that we have the new source online where you can either things for PD or for code complaints or parking or all that. So there's a handy little link where you can go submit photos, do a GPS tag where it's at and everything like that too. So that's an easy way for the future to tell people about as well.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Counselor.
That's really helpful. And Lonnie, just believe it or not, sometimes it's more effective to submit it yourself than to go through staff. I'm happy to forward it on. And I know Tegan is as well, but it's one of those customer service kind of things that sometimes you'll get faster service if you go straight to the source.
And I may
that
also
app actually, the app or the online website actually sends items to me and then also PD.
Oh.
Okay. So either way, it's coming to Tegan.
Tegan is the source.
I am the source. No, the online app is nice though because it creates like a better backlog for us to see where reoccurring issues are. So you can either send it to me, or if you put it through the traffic concern portal on the website, it also comes to me and to PD. So we'll see it that way as well. But then it's logged in there, so we can kind of query and go, hey, where are we seeing a lot of issues or complaints related to parking issues? And it just kind of lets us track things better.
Okay, thank you.
So every week, just submit it to her. That way it keeps her logged and you show it's a really bad problem.
I'm working on job security. So if you want to just send me complaints weekly, that would really help.
And have your coworkers do it. Every week have your coworkers do it. So 10 of them come through with the same picture and location.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be more work for me, so I don't know about that.
I'd like to ask folks to quit putting stuff in chat, please. That creates a public records request nightmare.
Mm-hmm. We'll okay, thanks for the reminder, Joe. We will grab those links and we'll send them out in an email following the meetings. I know people are sharing some information there, so we'll get those out in an email to everybody as well. Okay, I think I do have a few project item updates that I could share with folks if there's no more questions.
Great.
No, and okay. I've got to head out, Dave, so that Councilor Goodhouse. And
okay.
I presume you're going to be talking about the TNC that we passed last night.
Yep, that's on my list. Yep.
Okay. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, so we'll start with that item. So last night at City Council, City of Tigard passed an ordinance with a new TNC policy, and TNCs, for people who don't know, is a transportation network company, and that's in the Portland metro region. That's Uber and Lyft. And so Tigard is partnering with the city of Portland to create a new policy that basically essentially leverages Portland's existing policy for Uber and Lyft for the city of Tigard. And what that means is that we will have new requirements around driver verification, vehicle safety, data sharing, and so on and so forth from the companies that we did not have access to previously. So this this is kind of a complicated topic, and I'm happy to bring it back to give you a more thorough presentation at a future meeting if there's interest. But what this means for Tigard is that we'll have more oversight over Uber and Lyft in the city. We'll have a better understanding of how they're impacting the transportation system, understanding where there's higher concentrations of pickups and drop-offs, and we'll also be, as part of this, it is that there's a new fee that will show up on people's receipts in Tigard that mirrors the fee in Portland. So right now in Portland, if you take an Uber or a Lyft, there's a 50-cent City of Portland surcharge. So you're going to start seeing the same thing in Tigard. And the revenue generated from the fee will go to support program administration, but then it will also go to support transportation planning, engineering, and transportation capital investments in the city. So, initially, we're not anticipating significant revenue from this, but over time it will build up into a source of funds that we can use to build supportive infrastructure, particularly to support people walking to and from pickup and drop off locations. And then one of the things that we actually worked really closely with the companies, with Uber and Lyft, in refining our code language on this. And some of the feedback in particular that we heard from Lyft was that they're really interested in electrification of their fleet. And they asked us to include vehicle electrification infrastructure as one of the potential opportunities for this revenue to fund. And so I know the city and our city council is really interested in that. So some interesting opportunities in the future with this one. And the ordinance will go into effect in April. So I'm happy to answer any questions right now about that, or can again bring back a more thorough presentation later if there's interest.
Hi, Dave. It's Kareen.
Hi, Kareen.
I'm wondering, does this mean, like, if you take Lyft from Tigard to Portland or vice versa, you pay two surcharges, or do you pay one that the city split, or do you know?
That's a great question. I do know the answer. So the 50-cent fee is for trip origination only. So it's a fee based off where your trip originates from. So it's just one fee per trip, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Thanks.
Yeah. I see some hands up. I see George and Alan. Oh, George is down. Okay, Lindsay and then Alan. Alan. I think you're on mute, Alan.
Uh-oh. Am I still here?
Is this Lindsay? There you go.
Can you hear? Okay. I was just curious if there are other surrounding cities that are doing this as well, or if it's just Portland and Tigard at this point.
Good question. So we've actually been in talks with Portland for, well, we initiated talks with them before COVID, and then things basically stopped when COVID happened. And in the interim, Gresham and Portland also started talking, and Gresham just adopted their own TNC policy in November. So we're the second city, and it does look like this is turning into more of a regional effort. So I think it's likely you'll see other cities joining in this as well.
did you have a question? Are you on mute? Okay.
It says he's on hold. I don't know what that means. Wonder if I can unmute him. Oh no. Lindsay, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, just a follow-up. Do you know if the electrification, putting in more charging stations, is that something that Portland and Gresham were looking into also for, using these funds toward in part?
No. So this is an interesting one. Actually, if you go back and watch the council meeting from last night, you'll hear some interesting comments from Lyft. So that's an area where Lyft gave us some pretty big kudos in accepting their request to add that into our language. That we would be the first city in the Portland region that would be potentially taking this on, and they're actually really excited about it. So Portland's program and their code language is actually very restrictive of where their revenue goes, and I think they will eventually likely change their code language, but they're not planning on taking it back to their city council till sometime later in the year, or even next year. And then Gresham, I think, is fairly similar to ours, but they don't specifically call out vehicle electrification in theirs.
Oh, cool. That's nice for us to be out front there. We could be an example others could follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael.
So I had a quick question. Is this written just specifically for Uber and Lyft, or does it take into account other providers that may come online depending on how the market changes? I mean, Uber could be here today, but gone tomorrow. And does it take that into account?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, it's not specific. In fact, it doesn't say Uber or Lyft anywhere. It's TNCs is how the language is written. So
okay.
Yeah, in case there are changes in the market in the future. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Any other questions or comments before I move on? Okay. The next one I want to share with you was we just kicked off an engagement process for Southwest 79th Avenue. I think we've talked about this previously. 79th Avenue is, I believe it's a neighborhood class street, and it connects Bonita Road to Durham Road. And this is similar to a lot of streets in Tigard. There's a couple of segments of sidewalk built towards the southern end, and then the rest of it, we're missing sidewalks and there's no dedicated bicycle facilities. At the same time, we have a significant, in fact, the worst speeding problem in the city on this street in terms of number of vehicles and the speed at which they're driving over the speed limit. So this is one of our highest, if not our highest priority for traffic issues on a neighborhood street in a city. So we just kicked off a process. We have the website that just went live, and so we want to share the website with you so you can look at it and provide any comments or feedback to staff after looking at it. And the idea here is that we have an opportunity, because this street is slated for a slurry seal as part of the pavement management program this year. And so when we have a pavement project, even something like pretty basic or small scale, like a slurry seal project, we're able to rethink the striping configuration on a street. So there's an opportunity to do something different here. additionally, because of the problem with speeding here and the number of vehicles that are speeding and the speed at which they're driving, it's likely a good candidate for traffic calming. And so we would be able to potentially do some of these improvements in the relative near term. I think it's also important to point out that there is a CIP project that TTAC has prioritized here that still exists on the CIP to bring this roadway up to more of an urban standard. So sidewalks, curb and gutter, those sorts of improvements. But I don't think that project is not programmed till sort of the latter part of the CIP 6-year program. So we wanted to share that with you. And again, we'll send you some more info after the meeting so you can look at the website. I see, George, you have your hand up.
Yeah, is this is the street that Mr. That John I think Smith, I can't remember his name, but has come to TTAC about several times in City Council.
Yep.
Between Durham,
John Smith. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I thought so. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is a neighbor who lives in the area, and we've already engaged with him on this effort, and so we've heard from him already. Yep. All right. That's
good news.
Yeah. I think I'm excited about this project. I think it can serve as a good model for how we do these sorts of projects where, we're using, the data that Tegan's put together to identify the worst problem areas and then engaging the neighborhood on potential solutions for those. Those are all the items I have on my list.
Okay. We have anything else that we need to bring up before we adjourn? So our next meeting will be on April 7th. And thank you, Joe, for including the links and information so we can look at those things. People that are interested in working with us on the Tigard on the Move, the transportation equity piece, if you want to reach out to me directly, then we'll go ahead and start putting something together. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, Ruth.